Okay. So, since my aunt is wanting to bring up my divorce paperwork and shame me for my failed marriage, um, I thought I would give a little bit of context and talk a little bit about what happened between me and my first spouse. Um, it's very complicated. It's a very complicated situation, especially with June being Pride Month. It's even more complicated for me to talk about it because I am accepting of gay people, of trans people. I try to be. But I still have trouble getting the pronouns correct for my ex. Um, just because my whole life I had known them as a he, and my brain, it's difficult. It's not because I'm intentionally dead naming them. It's simply a habit. I met my spouse in, I believe I was a freshman in high school. And we weren't like super good friends, but we talked. He was one of the boys that would pull my pigtails and run away. And yes, they still did that in ninth grade. We were very immature. Um, After I graduated, I was living in my Jeep that my grandmother had given me when I graduated. It was a 1998 Grand Jeep Cherokee, if y'all are interested. Had gold rims. It's nice. I flipped it. Anyways, um, so my spouse ran into me while I was living in my Jeep. They had a flat tire on their bike, and I had offered them a ride home so they could fix it. And upon learning that I was homeless and single, they offered me a place to stay. And then within a few days, we were dating. I mean, I'm pretty sure we had sex the first night, so it moved a little fast. Um, I was struggling really bad mentally at that time. I had just moved from the chaoticness of my parents, and I was having blackouts. And I didn't know that I was having blackouts. They told me that this was happening. And what would happen, apparently, well, the reason I found out about it, let's just say that a few years into our marriage, I picked up a game. I still fucking remember it. It was Kelly Slater Surfer. And I was playing it, and I thought it was the first time I had ever played it. And I was doing really good at it. And I said something about this game is really easy because I'm just blowing through this shit. And they said, well, it should be. You've played it. Like, you've mastered that thing. You sat and played it nonstop for nearly a week. And I had no memory of this. But somewhere in my brain remembered it because I could still play it without needing to be taught or anything. And I was really good at it. So at that time, the first year or two, I was having these blackouts where I would sometimes just sit and do nothing, sometimes play a video game endlessly, watch TV. I don't really know what I always did when I was blacked out. No, I only know what people told me I did, which was just kind of sit around. So, back to the main plot. I moved in with him. We started dating. We got married within, I want to say within 6 months of me moving in with him. And that was when a lot of the trouble really started. That was when things got really violent, and it wasn't all them, it was a lot of me too, because I was having my own anger issues. And so we just wound up beating the shit out of each other all the time. If we weren't hitting, we were screaming. And if we weren't doing that, we were working. And it wasn't a happy situation. For a long time, I held 2 jobs to pay the bills because I hurt their knee, and they weren't able to work. And then I found out that they were faking the injury and just kind of going and sleeping with other people while I was at work. That was a bad situation. We were constantly moving from place to place, getting scammed by places like the lady I told y'all before, the alcoholic that just ran out in the night and left us to deal with the police the next morning on a condemned bitch. We had a couple of situations like that. We couldn't stay in one area for too long because they kept getting fired. Like every job, they would wind up losing for one reason or another. Normally it was anger. I know he lost the one at, I want to say Boston Market. They were always getting hurt, too. And so, like, at Boston Market, they were changing a light bulb and up on a ladder or something, and somebody threw keys at them and hit them in the face and broke their tooth out. And the workers' comp, after they paid for the new tooth, they just, like, fired him for it. And then there was the other one where he dropped a tomato slicer on his finger, and the workers' comp take that, and then they fired him for it. So he was either getting fired. They're either always getting fired for anger or for getting hurt, which left them always hurt. So it was stressful, you know. And then it all came to a head one night in 2006. We were living at the property that my grandmother had left me. It's out in the woods. And he had nearly broken my back. I had locked myself in the bathroom and had pressed my feet against the toilet to hold my back further against the door, because it was a very small bathroom. And he had forced his way in to the point that it knocked the toilet off. And there was just water spewing up, and that really pissed him off. I got into the living room, and I grabbed something. I don't even remember what I threw. I threw it out at the window, and I broke the window, and I was screaming. And finally, I saw headlights coming up the driveway. And sorry, trying not to get emotional while I talk about this stuff. A bunch of our neighbors had heard me screaming and had come prepared to take care of the problem. They grabbed them, and threw them in the back of a pickup truck and drove them just outside of town. They put him in a motel. I think for a couple of days they paid for it, and said that if they ever saw them down that road again, that they would just kill them. I had lived out there with my grandmother my whole life. These men knew me. Sorry. Apparently, talking about times people have actually shown they care about me makes me emotional as fuck. That's a fun new revelation to learn. Anyways, so these men who were my neighbors out there, they took my spouse away. And I started hanging out with my friends to deal, with the fact that I had just lost my husband and I was, I think, 22 at the time, 21 maybe. So we were drinking, just hanging out. I believe it was the same night I wound up spraining my ankle jumping into the pool. We were trying to jump into a swimming pool and land on a boogie board and like slide all the way across to the end. We were drunk and young and had a swimming pool and a boogie board. I don't know what to tell you. Well, we got a call that my father had committed suicide. And I kind of freaked out. And I started having blackouts again, real bad. And I don't even know what happened for a couple of days there. I called my spouse and told them about my father. And they came to comfort me. And we wound up getting back together for a while. Upon getting back together, we had a discussion about why what had happened. And they told me that they were trans, that they had always felt like they were supposed to be a girl, and their adoptive parents had put them through a lot of bullshit conversion therapies and really messed them up. He came out and said that the only reason that they actually married me was because I was a woman and I was willing to marry them. And they needed basically a shield. They needed to be able to go to their parents and say, look, I'm with a woman now. I'm better. I'm fixed. You can love me. And not worry about me anymore because I'm not broken anymore. See? I have a woman. And she's pretty. And that lifestyle made him angry. Because he believed that's what men were supposed to be. They were supposed to be the head of the household, in control of their women, and I was not a controllable woman. Especially when I was at my worst state of having blackouts. I was not controllable, even with fists. I would hit back, and it would only escalate. Things got a little easier after that conversation, after I understood what the problem was. I rented some movies to watch with them to help me understand what they were going through. But the only movies I could find involved the trans person being murdered. And that made it look like I was trying to, dissuade them. Which wasn't the exact intention. I guess now there would be better picks out there. Anyways. Later, after I came home one day and found them sleeping with another woman, well, I found them both naked in our bed, and they have always maintained that they were not having sex. It was just really hot that day, so they got naked. Which totally makes sense. That was the final straw where I left them. I broke my skateboard over their bad knee, and I just took off and quit both my jobs and moved in with my grandmother. After that, we had another conversation. where they told me that the main reason they were cheating on me was because I had given them the confidence to do so. Because I was allowing them to dress the way they wanted and act the way they wanted, and it gave them the confidence to talk to other people the way they wanted. And he slept with a lot of people. They were confused. And during this conversation, they asked if we could just stay married on paper for a little while. If I didn't care, if I wasn't planning on marrying, because they weren't planning on ever getting married again. And if they had the marriage on paper, they would have a built-in excuse for, they would have a built-in excuse for their parents for why he's not just bringing home another girl and getting married again and doing this again. And they knew that they would never be safe marrying a fella, even though it's that things are changing because of the parents' point of view. So originally I was a unknowing beard, which is painful. Afterwards I became a willing beard for a couple of years, just because I didn't know how else to support other than to do what they asked and just not file for the paperwork unless I had gotten into another relationship with him, which I didn't think was going to happen. Of course, I wasn't always accepting either. It was extremely difficult for me. I met him as a man. I thought I had married a man. I thought that, it was hard for me. And there were some nasty things that were said, things that I would be ashamed of now, because I was young and angry and lied to and betrayed on a very deep level. They have HIV now, and I don't know what has really become. I know what name they used to use, and I've tried not to use it because I don't want them to be contacted by any of the people in this group. I still care a lot about them. I wouldn't have married them if I didn't have feelings. That's why it hurts so bad when my aunt uses the paperwork to shame me, because it's not as black and white as she wants to make it look. It was a very complicated situation with two very complicated people. And it's been over for a decade. And there's a part of me that will always be with them. I know that. Wherever they are today, I hope that they're doing well. And I hope that they feel accepted and loved, because they deserve that. Because they weren't bad. They were just very confused. We both were.